So today I'm going to do the grand old task of ranking the MCU movies. I know, it's something that we haven't seen here before on YouTube. This is a brand new thing. It's like a new style of video. And I own it. I'm going to copyright it. This is mine. No one else can do this. No one else can take it. Yeah, it's ranking the MCU based on, you know, what's the worst film to the best film in the franchise. No one is doing this. No one else is doing this.
Actually, everyone is doing this.
Sorry?
Idiot.
Everybody is doing this. I'm doing something that everybody, every YouTuber, every single movie YouTuber on Earth has done this before me. Huh. Well, let's do it anyway. Okay, so coming in at number 23, absolute worst, easily the worst one is Thor 2, Thor the Dark Thor, Thor the Dark World, Thor 2, the second Thor. It sucks. It just sucks. It's no good. The villain sucks. Do you remember the villain? I certainly kind of do a little bit, but not really. Do you remember what happens? Yeah, there's some portals or something. That's about all there is to remember about Thor 2. To be fair, it's not terrible. It's just bland, and it doesn't stand out at all. It's just your most generic, most just not stand outy film of the entire MCU, and it kind of sucks. Number 22 is Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, the Edward Norton Hulk. This one I actually kind of like. I think it's a little bit underrated if I'm being honest, but it doesn't fit in at all. Like, do you remember when they were Marvel was a little bit shy. They weren't quite sure what they were doing yet. You know, we didn't know, they didn't know what Marvel was going to be yet. We didn't know that the MCU was going to reach the heights that it eventually did, you know, in the next decade since. But yeah, as for the 2008 Edward Norton Hulk, it's okay. It's got some fun action, and I do have to actually praise something about it in that I think that this is the best looking Hulk. I'm not saying that this is like a sexy Hulk or whatever. Like, I'm just saying, like, he looks kind of cool, you know? Like, I know it's like super CGI and stuff, and it doesn't look anything like Edward Norton, like Mark Ruffalo's Hulk looks like Mark Ruffalo. Like, this is just completely a monster that looks nothing like him, but I think it totally works. I think the Hulk is the best looking Hulk that we've seen on screen in this version. As for the film itself though, you know, it's fine. I don't know. Next up is Captain Marvel at 21. Now, this is maybe a hot take, depending on who you ask. And I do have to say that I don't think that this is terrible. I don't think this is like the worst thing ever. A lot of people really shit on Captain Marvel, which I think is a fairly good movie, to be honest. It's just not one that stands out. The thing about Captain Marvel here is that, especially in 2019 compared to what we're about to see in Endgame, what we had just seen in Infinity War, is that this felt like a really generic kind of throwback. Like, this felt like the kind of thing that would have come out at the start of the MCU, you know, before it got big, before it evolved into what it was into. This was just kind of a basic-ass MCU film, and I feel like we've kind of evolved from that as an audience. You know, we've kind of come to expect more from these films. But, you know, as it goes in the cinema of history and all this stuff, I will say that Captain Marvel is about on par with those early MCU films. You know, it feels similar in terms of quality to the first Thor, and stuff like that. I don't mind it, but it doesn't stand out that much, and I certainly don't love it either. And then 20, maybe this one is a hot take as well, because I know that there are some pretty big fans of this one, but Doctor Strange is my number 20. I think it's okay. It's kind of cool, I guess. Mads Mikkelsen plays a pretty good character in a way. Or maybe he doesn't. Maybe I just like Mads Mikkelsen. To be honest, I was kind of disappointed by his character, because I didn't feel like they fully used him as much as they could. You know, you get an actor like Mads Mikkelsen and you can expect greatness. It was pretty great, but like, not that great. In fact, I don't even remember the character's name. But I do have to say, when it comes to Doctor Strange, is that I highly appreciate the creativity when it comes to, you know, all the special effects and the portals and all the weird magical stuff that they do in that movie. Like, it's pretty cool. It's pretty spectacular in terms of what is going on in front of your eyeballs while you watch the film. Also, Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One, kind of cool. And Benedict Cumberbatch, that's how you say his name. Benedict Cumberbatch, he plays a perfect Stephen Strange. Like, very much fits the role. On par, maybe, not quite, but pretty good up there with Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. Like, I definitely think that he is going to own the role, particularly in the films to come where he's going to keep playing that role. And then number 19 is Iron Man 2, which is another one that I have to say I actually think is kind of underrated. I like the guy, Whiplash, who said he wants his bud, you know? I want my bud. I can't say that at all, but you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I don't know, the Whiplash guy is kind of cool with his whips. But I think it's pretty damn good. I don't know, a lot of people say that Iron Man 2 really dips in quality as compared to the first one, but I have to say that it feels pretty similar, to be honest. Like, it kind of makes sense watching from 1 to 2. Like, you know, it doesn't feel like jarring. It does kind of contradict itself a little bit with the morals and stuff that Tony Stark sort of learns in the first one, and then it kind of feels like he's retreading his character a little bit in the second one. But I think it's mainly pretty strong, and I like the new roadie played by, what's his name? Don Cheadle? Nailed it. And I don't know. I think it's alright. I think it's fairly fine. I think people are too hard on Iron Man 2. There, I said it. And then next up is the first Ant-Man movie, which is just the most casual fun. It's harmless. It's not trying too hard to be the most epic thing you've ever seen in your life. It's not trying too hard to be too epic, too big, too cool. It's just a fun, simple movie that I can super get behind. Paul Rudd obviously is super likable. The one flaw, obviously, when it comes to the first Ant-Man is the villain is just the copy and paste version of the hero. As we see, you know, that's kind of a common problem when it comes to the MCU, where they just kind of fight the evil version of themselves, kind of like when you're playing Mortal Kombat or something, and you both pick Scorpion, and the other Scorpion is like green or something, just to differentiate. It does kind of feel like that in some of these films when it comes to that final battle, and Ant-Man does feel like that, where Yellow Jacket kind of just feels like you know, the villain kind of just feels like a yellow version of Ant-Man, which kind of sucks, but still, whatever his name is, Cross the human behind that character, I do think is an okay villain. I kind of like him. But yeah, I don't know, it's good. And then after that is just Ant-Man 2, Ant-Man and the Wasp. I feel pretty damn similarly about this, like, you know, it's good, but, you know, this one edges just a little bit up there because Evangeline Lilly gets to play the Wasp in this one after the first one, where Michael Douglas is just like, nah, you can't be the Wasp for some reason. Like, I felt like she could have been the Wasp, and then in the sequel she was the Wasp. So there you go. It's a little bit better just because of that, but it's pretty much... It's like the same movie, like in terms of quality, you know, obviously different things happen, but like, in terms of like quality, in terms of comedy, in terms of the kind of story that it is, Ant-Man and Ant-Man 2 are just kind of the same. I like them, but they're not mind-blowing. And then next up at 16 is the first Thor movie, which I again think is kind of an underrated film. I think that this film actually really nails this idea of the brotherly bond between him and Loki. And it kind of delves into that male relationship that I think the MCU actually does a really good job of, how it's kind of complicated. They kind of have feelings for each other, you know, they love each other, they're familial, but they also have this conflict and they're also very competitive. I feel like it's kind of an interesting relationship between him and Loki, and I feel like they do that maybe best in this first Thor. Because in the later ones, you know, Loki becomes more of an anti-hero and all that kind of stuff when you're not quite sure what he's going to do. He's always betraying everybody, but he's always coming back and all this stuff. But in the first Thor, I feel like they really established these characters and their relationship really well. But then again, you know, as for the rest of the film, it doesn't stand out that much. It's not the greatest thing ever, but there is that scene where Thor's like, another, and he smashes the cup. And just for that, I mean, quality cinema right there. I like it. And then next up at number 15, and this is definitely going to be another hot take, it's the original Avengers. Yep, if you can believe it, the original Avengers is this high or low, up, down on my list. I don't love the first Avengers. I think it's good. I think it did a really good job of, you know, balancing the characters, establishing their relationships with each other and all that kind of stuff. There's that playful banter going on between characters. There's that honest, actual competitive banter where they actually legitimately don't like each other. And there's some great character work in here. But I think that first half is just kind of boring, to be honest. Like, when I'm rewatching the original Avengers, I'm like, oh, shit, we don't get to, like, the actual New York part until, like, fuck, an hour and a half into this thing or something. I don't know, just during that first half, in retrospect, I'm like, I think the MCU has done better with the Avengers, to be honest. And that might be a controversial take, because the one that everybody supposedly hates, well, I haven't mentioned on my list yet. Yeah, I like Age of Ultron more than the first Avengers. We'll get to that a bit later, though. But I just think, yeah, that first half of the first one kind of brings it down. But obviously that second half is spectacular, and that's why it's, you know, this high up on the list. It's not right at the very worst of these films, because it's obviously amazing. It's obviously great. I mean, The Avengers is a goddamn classic. You can't deny that. I think that The Avengers is an important film. I think that it's something that, you know, this generation, people my age, are going to show their kids down the line. I think that this is going to be a film that's going to be talked about for many, many years to come. But I also think that the first half is boring, so fuck yeah. At number 14, Black Panther. I'm sorry, fans of Black Panther. I know this is a very important film for a lot of people, and I know it's very good. Pretty much from this one on, and even a few of the others just before this, don't misunderstand me here. I love every single one of these movies, barring maybe Thor 2 and the first Hulk. Pretty much from, you know, whatever point late up there on the list and downwards. I love every single one of these movies. The MCU is just tremendous in what it has achieved in terms of being this many films down the line and still being goddamn great. And, you know, Black Panther's no exception. And I also have to praise the villain, because this has easily one of the best villains in Killmonger. He is awesome. I absolutely love that character. I understand where he's coming from. I kind of don't feel him as a villain in some ways, but obviously he takes things too far, and that's what makes a really good villain, with a compelling argument, but who takes things too far, who you can kind of understand the motivation, but who you can't agree with based on pure action. And I think that that is fantastic in this character, and I think that that's what Black Panther does absolutely amazingly. And, you know, Black Panther himself, Chadwick Boseman, who unfortunately passed away, you know, does a good job of embodying the character. I understand he's an important character, and I think that, you know, the film does a pretty damn good job of showing him as this noble hero and all that kind of stuff. And it's a damn good film. Like, it's really, really good. And the part where they're in the casino thing and the fight scene and all that stuff, it's cool. It's cool. But another thing that I have to say is bad about this film, though, is that final battle. Come on, man. Everyone knows what I'm talking about when it comes to that final battle. It's just Rubber Suit City going on down there. Like, it's no good. And it's quite disappointing for such a serious film prior to that. And yeah, it really kind of screws things up right at that finish line a little bit. But, you know, that obviously doesn't undo everything else that the film did before it. And it's a fantastic film. Okay, so next up is Thor Ragnarok, which, yeah, again, I think that this is just hot take city at the moment. But I think that Thor Ragnarok is overrated. There, I said it, don't hit me. Look, we all know Taika Waititi is a great director, he's a funny guy and all that stuff, but I kind of, sometimes his shtick is a little bit like, yeah, I get it, you're all quirky and stuff. I'm not absolutely in love with this movie like other people are, because when I saw it in cinemas, it kind of just felt like everybody was laughing at every single line. To be fair, I haven't watched it since cinemas yet. But yeah, I just felt like it wasn't quite as funny as people were making it out to be honest. I don't know. But it does have that really cool thing with Thor on the Rainbow Bridge, whatever the fuck it's called in Asgard. You know what I'm talking about. And he's fighting that giant wolf and stuff, and they're fighting in the gladiator thing going on and all this stuff, and I don't know, it's a pretty damn cool movie and it's very creative. That is something that I definitely have to praise about it. Taika Waititi definitely brings his own personality to this film, which is something that I can appreciate. It's unique, and that's something that I like about it. That's something that I definitely think is important when it comes to these, you know, this franchise from film to film. it's directors like these that bring their personality to the films, that kind of differentiate each film, that kind of makes it bearable. It kind of makes it so that the MCU doesn't just get stale and old and we're all like, yeah, I fucking get it. We've seen this over and over. Because Thor Ragnarok, you know, even though I do think it's a little bit overrated, I can say that it definitely stands out. It's definitely different enough. It's definitely fun. It's definitely a really good film that doesn't just feel like every single other one. And I think it definitely achieves in that way. I do think that Hela as a villain is sort of just meh. I'm not super into the villain. I think she's just kind of like generic, boring. There's a family member that you suddenly were mentioning. Like, I kind of hate when they retcon, like, oh yeah, you've had this family member the whole time in movies like this. Like in Spider-Man 3, it's not a family member, but they're like, oh yeah, the Sandman killed Uncle Ben, not just some random guy. I hate that. Like, I know Spider-Man 3 isn't a super popular movie, but I hate that they retcon shit like that sometimes. And in that, I don't know, Hela just kind of, she shouldn't exist in my mind. But then again, I guess it's based on, like, what? Greek gods? What are they? Something gods. Some mythical stories or whatever. So it's probably an established thing. But for me, it was just kind of like, well, why didn't we mention her before? But that's my own fucking thing. That really has nothing, that's not fair on the movie. I'm just gonna shut up about it now. I'm gonna stop talking about it. Then it's Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Something that I have to say about this film is that I also think this has a really, really good villain. In Kurt Russell's, what's his name? The Planet Man, Ego the Living Planet. Kurt Russell is amazing as this fatherly, villainous figure. And I think that there's some really great conflict there. I think this is a very human film for such a fucking weird, you know, galaxy questy looking thing. Like, you know, everything's set in space, there's aliens going on, all this stuff. It's an action movie. There's those weird gold women and whatever that was about and all that stuff. You know, there's talking trees or teenage trees, and there's talking raccoons and all this stuff. You know, it's a weird film, but, you know, as James Gunn does, he brings heart to it. And he really brings, again, like Taika Waititi, his personality into these films. And Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is just awesome. It's so much fun, but it's also not my fave. So it's here. Next up is Spider-Man Far From Home, which is the sequel to the Tom Holland Spider-Man film, which introduced, or well, probably we're not going to see him again, Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, which I was so excited to see ever since playing the PS2 game of Spider-Man and fighting against Mysterio in his weird funhouse mission where you're like, there's these missions that, well, it's one mission where you're in like a circus tent or whatever, and there's like those magic mirrors and these evil Spider-Man clones that are all misshapen and stuff come, and you have to fight them all and all this stuff, and everything's upside down. It's so cool, and I've loved Mysterio since, so I was super excited to see him come in Far From Home. But anyway, also, Jake Gyllenhaal's my favourite actor, so I was pretty excited for that. But beyond that, the film itself, I think is just really fun. Kind of like AntMan. It's just kind of a casual thing where it doesn't feel like the stakes are too high. I mean, they're pretty damn high. You know, he has to save a lot of people, all this stuff. But it doesn't feel like, you know, the entire world is ending. You know, it feels a little bit more street level, a little bit, not quite as much as like the Defenders on the Netflix shows or anything. But, you know, it is a little bit more grounded, a little bit maybe. And, you know, Tom Holland does a great job as Spider-Man. I absolutely love the character of Spider-Man. He's probably my least favorite Peter Parker though, maybe Andrew Garfield. I love Tobey Maguire. I don't know. That's a topic for another video, for another day. But I do like Tom Holland. I think he does a good job as the character. I do think that it's pretty cool that, you know, he feels like actually the right age. He's not a 30-year-old man in high school. I appreciate that. But I don't think that Far From Home is a perfect film. I do think that some of the logic drags when it comes to Peter Parker's actions with the old super glasses that Tony Stark leaves him. Anyway, Far From Home is a good film, and it's as simple as that, really. Then there is the first Iron Man, which is an absolute classic. I mean, again, like the first Avengers, I think that this is one of the most important of the entire franchise. I again think it's going to be a film that's going to be talked about for years to come. Revolutionary for its time. It started something so much bigger than we ever probably could have even comprehended at the time. And, you know, obviously, Robert Downey Jr. in this role, iconic. Like, nobody can play the character like him. He is up there with Hugh Jackman as Wolverine as being just this icon. Just, you can't picture anybody else playing this role anymore. He's ruined it for everyone else because it's just absolutely perfect. He's likable, but he's an asshole, but he's funny, but he's a hero as well. But you love and you hate him. He's a very complex character, and it was such an amazing, you know, kind of experience to see him evolve as a character from this one up until Endgame. And that's something that is obviously amazing about the MCU in general, because it was like, these characters actually feel lived in. They actually feel like they're evolving, which is something to really appreciate, particularly when, no offense to DC fans, but like, it just doesn't feel like the continuity is really making much sense in those films. It kind of just feels like, what, the second film, Batman v Superman, the second film, yeah, okay, let's kill Superman, yeah, that seems like a logical step in his second appearance. Like, I don't know, it just kind of feels like the MCU is really, it does a really good job of taking these steps into getting to the next stages, if that makes sense. And Iron Man is the one that started it all. It's epic. Iron Man is amazing. And then next up at number 7 is Spider-Man Homecoming. I do like that this one's just kind of like, it kind of delves into more of just being a comedy. And, you know, it doesn't always feel like it's this epic superhero film. It kind of sometimes, it goes deeper into kind of character moments and all that kind of stuff. It's not afraid to... It's not afraid to kind of sway away from the action for a moment, to give us a few laughs, to get us closer to the characters, to just let them breathe for a bit, to let them kind of, you know, just relax, live in this high school environment and all this kind of stuff. And I like that about it. I appreciate that it doesn't feel like it's obligated to always be doing action 24/7. You know, Spider-Man is about much more than just that. It's about the responsibilities. It's about like the never having enough time and all that kind of stuff. It's about the struggles of being Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And I think this film, you know, does a good job of that, as well as kind of having that hidden identity thing that we're not going to have now in the in the third Spider-Man, whatever that's going to be called, Home something, Spider-Home Man 3. But yeah, I think this first one, it does a really good job of just having these small character moments. And also, best villain. No, second best villain. I like Killmonger the most. But the Vulture is pretty damn close second. Because, yeah, Michael Keaton as the Vulture, intimidating as hell. Understandable, I can see where he's coming from. I'm kind of on his side a little bit, even though he's an asshole. And that scene with him in the car, and he knows, oh man, that is just the definition of tension. And that's brilliant. That is something that we don't see a hell of a lot in the MCU. Scenes like this, it definitely stood out, and it reigns up there as one of my favorite scenes of the MCU in general. And then next up is Iron Man 3, which actually I think is maybe a little bit too low, because I love Iron Man 3. I legitimately love it. I think people are way too hard on Iron Man 3. With Shane Black and Robert Downey Jr. reuniting since Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and shooting out that fun dialogue and just having this kind of slightly meta, like slightly crime story thing, weird kind of thing going on. And there's that scene where he kind of loses part of his suits and he's just got the glove and he's just got the foot and he's like shooting people and stuff. That's just cool stuff. I don't know. I think that this is easily probably the funniest film in the MCU. It's very on my level. I really like this film. The one thing that I will say is that Aldrich Killian is just kind of a generic villain. He's whatever. He's alright, I suppose. And the one thing, the elephant in the room, the thing that everybody hates about this movie for some reason is the treatment of the Mandarin in Trevor, the surprise the surprise twist that the Mandarin is just some guy named Trevor and he's kind of just this loser. Personally, I kind of love that. I thought it was hilarious when I saw it in cinemas, and I've continued to think it was hilarious in rewatches since. I kind of really like that character. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with the Mandarin himself, so maybe I don't really have the authority to say what I think about it. But when I watch it, I'm like, hey, That's funny. What a good misdirect. But yeah, it's got an interesting story, and I think it's really fun. It's hilarious, and it's got its fair mix of like drama and stuff in there as well. You know, Iron Man's home gets destroyed, all this kind of stuff. It's a good film, man. It's good, whatever. People are way too hard on Iron Man 3, and it's just because of the Mandarin. Like, forget about the Mandarin for a second. Just appreciate it for the fucking good dialogue and all that stuff. It's good. The Avengers Infinity War, which was absolutely astonishing when I saw it in cinemas. One thing that I will say, and spoilers, whatever spoilers, I'm sure you've seen all these films if you're watching this. The end of Infinity War is something that I highly appreciate in retrospect. I think that it is amazing. I love that they took the risk, you know, killing off half of the characters, killing off half the planet, all this stuff. You know, I love the tragic ending that you don't see in this genre very much, or ever really. It was, you know, kind of a bold step, and it was really... I was surprised as hell when I saw it in cinemas, even if we kind of saw it coming. But the thing that I do have to say is, and this was my fault, this was me being an idiot, was that in that final act of Infinity War, when I saw it for the first time, I'm like, oh my god, this is a long-ass movie. Like, they're still fighting, and they're gonna have to beat him and fix everything, and everyone's gonna win and whatever. There must still be like half an hour of this movie left. Oh my god. And then, like, they fail, and then it ends. And I wasn't ready. I was not ready for it. I was like, shit, I should have really been more emotionally involved in this. Because I was watching it and I'm just thinking, yeah, they're going to save the day, whatever. I wasn't feeling the danger. And then I'm like, oh my god! They all died. Well, some of them died. Anyway, as we all know and knew even at the time, they were obviously all going to come back and all that stuff. But still, I wasn't ready for it. It shocked me at the time. Just a stupid cinema story for you right there. Anyway, talking about the actual film, Infinity War, it does impeccably at balancing just 1,000 billion characters. Like, it actually somehow manages to get everybody to get some moment to shine. And I think that is pretty damn impressive when it comes to the size of the cast in Infinity War. I also think that it does have that sense of danger. You know, Thanos is a pretty good villain in terms of feeling like he could just about demolish anything. And I do like his motivation in this film. You know, it does feel like he's trying to do the right thing and all that kind of stuff. It does feel like it's a character that makes sense. I will say that I don't think he's the best villain. Not even close, really. I think that, I get he's the big epic one. He's the biggest, most dangerous one or whatever. But, you know, at the end of the day, he is a giant purple man. And so I've got a few others that I like ahead of Thanos. But still, good villain, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. We all know. We all know what everyone thinks the same thing, I would say. That's probably not true. Anyway, Infinity War is good. And then at number 6, it's Avengers Endgame. You know, it's epic. It had to be in my top 10, but it didn't quite crack my top 5. But, you know, nothing quite gets as disastrous as this. Nothing quite gets as big as this. This was an event. This was like a big deal when it came out. Endgame does a fantastic job of having just everything really resonate with you. It's a very emotional film. But it also has some time to laugh. You know, it gets a bit silly at times as well. You know, the MCU often has this problem where it kind of tries to be a little bit too funny in places where it's like, yeah, we didn't really need a joke there. But I think that Endgame really balances its humor well. I really love the time travel aspect and all the fan servicey stuff there where they travel back to the familiar moments and we get to kind of relive them, but in the modern time, 8 years later or 7 years later, or 2012, 2019, 7 years. And we kind of get to relive it those few years later, see it through the fresh eyes of the evolved characters and all that stuff. You know how Hulk is kind of judgmental of his animalistic Hulk how he used to be in the 2012 Avengers and all that stuff. I really love that, but the best scene of this film is easily Tony Stark talking to his dad in the past. It's so emotional to me. Like, I was surprised by just how much it got to me. I absolutely loved that scene. I thought it was, really heartfelt. And obviously all the stuff with his daughter as well and the big risk that he takes to be a hero. This movie really does a good job of showing just how much of a hero Iron Man is and just how much Tony Stark has changed since that first outing. I absolutely love Endgame, But I do have to say that I think Thanos kind of sucks in it, though. That is definitely my one big flaw when it comes to this film. In that, Thanos kind of made sense in Infinity War, where he was like, yeah, he wants to save the world. He's trying to use less resources. He's trying to help, even if it's in a fucked up way that's not really helping. But in Endgame, he's kind of just like, yeah, guess I was wrong. Fuck yous all. I'm just going to kill everyone. He just kind of turns into like this big evil... he was already a big evil purple man, but now he's just turned into this even more somehow cartoonish villain who just wants to end the world for the sake of it. And it's like, oh, you kind of had human motivation. Now you kind of don't. And that disappointed me a little bit. But, in the end, this is a superhero film where they really had to up the stakes. And how are you going to up the stakes from killing half the world? I guess you're going to kill the entire world, aren't you? So I guess it makes sense. And, the final battle, epic as it is, it's amazing in visual effects and all this shit. But for me, it doesn't quite live up to that Infinity War one. It kind of just felt the same. It feels like they're in just this space that's obviously like a studio or whatever, and it doesn't feel that weighty to me. Apart from the moments where, Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man are facing off against Thanos alone. That stuff I love. That stuff is amazing. That stuff is very intense and, yeah, really well done. It's just when there's armies and armies and all that shit that I kind of start to zone out. I'm kind of like, yeah, okay, I get it. They're fighting. But that could just be me. I don't know. I'm not super into the giant action type of stuff. I'm not generally into armies fighting and all that kind of stuff. It's just a taste thing maybe. I don't know. Okay, top 5. Coming in at number 5 is the first Guardians of the Galaxy. James Gunn, like I said, brought his own personality, but also did a really good job of establishing these weird characters, but also giving them personality and heart and making us care about these weirdos. It was also a really big risk for the MCU at the time. In 2014, we hadn't quite got to the weird part yet. We hadn't quite seen something like Guardians of the Galaxy yet from the genre, from the MCU, from any of it. This was kind of a new thing. It was kind of a big deal. It was like, yeah, it was really different. I had no idea what the hell Guardians of the Galaxy was at the time. I'd never heard of him. No idea. But, they made me care about the characters very much. And I'm far from the only one, And yeah, along with that, it's also got like the great action and all that stuff. This is probably maybe the funnest film of the MCU, if I'm being honest. Like, it is goddamn good, and it's probably my most rewatched film of the MCU, actually. This is kind of like, I've described it like this before as my Star Wars, because like I was never really into Star Wars in the past. Like, I kind of like them, but I didn't really get into them until The Force Awakens came out. So when I first saw Guardians of the Galaxy and rewatched it and stuff when I got it on DVD, I referred to it as my Star Wars before I liked real Star Wars, and now I kind of hate Star Wars again since Rise of Skywalker, but let's not get into that. Anyway, Guardians of the Galaxy is great. James Gunn really brought his own personality. The writing in it is just impeccable. That's a word I'm going to use. Definitely a word I use in general conversation. And it's good, that's all. And then number 4 is Captain America Civil War. This does a great job of having the conflict between these heroes, and you really buy into this conflict. I think that this is one of the most mature films of the entire franchise, and I think it does a great job in the heart between Iron Man and Captain America. That is easily, obviously, the main theme and the best part of this film, and something that really, as a fan of the films, prior, as a big fan going into it, it really feels like there's stakes, and it really feels like you don't quite know who to side with. You don't know who you kind of agree with, because they both have good points when it comes to the Sokovia Accords, and that whole argument, it makes a lot of sense where both of them are coming from. And I really love that. I think that superhero films, this genre, could really do with having a lot more of these generally morally complex situations and these kind of different arguments. They come in from different aspects. They come in from different points of view. And I think that that's kind of really unique when it comes to this, when it comes to this genre, because, a lot of superhero films, it's just kind of like, yeah, here's the hero. Now he's going to beat up the villain. There's no complexity there. I'm not quite sure. Like, in this, though, the villain is kind of each other, in a way. did that make any sense? Look, the real villain is Baron Zemo, let's be honest, who is also a good villain. I think the thing when it comes to me is that I like the human villains. They just feel more real. But really, the conflict between Iron Man and Captain America is great. Also, fucking sick airport fight. Come on, man. And it introduced Spider-Man into the MCU, which was like such a big deal for me in 2016. And I was super depressed in a job that I was working at the time for like 6 months or something. And I could really do with Civil War at the time. It did good things for me in 2016. And it's a fantastic film in all my rewatches. Absolutely love it. I think it's amazing. And blah, blah, blah. Let's get to the next stuff. So, number 3. What is number 3? Number 3 is Captain America, the First Avenger. Now, I think this is obviously very different in terms of the time period and all that kind of stuff. But it just feels like this classic kind of film. It feels like it belongs in another era because, Steve Rogers himself is such a hero. He's such a man to look up to. He's so genuine. He just feels like this guy who just wants to do good. And I buy into that. I think Chris Evans, again, like Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, and better than Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, if you ask me. I think that he totally owns this role. I do think probably maybe other actors could play him because I get he's kind of a bland, he's a white piece of bread kind of character. He's just the hero. But he brings this certain complexity to it where he's more than just a hero. He's this genuine guy. He's this nice guy, but he's also cool. Like, he's not just this boring, bland hero. He has a charm to him. He's just, I don't know. I'm kind of in love with Captain America, I guess is what I'm saying. But the World War II setting is just something that we don't really see in this genre that's so cool. Red Skull is such a cool, cartoony villain, so over the top. And, the kind of just retroactive, old-timey feel to it is something that I really, really appreciate about it. I think it's a fantastic film. I think it's so underrated. I don't think people quite give it its due. Like, I think that people love Endgame. People love Infinity War. People love this and that, but I don't know, this one feels more subdued, but it also feels epic. It also feels like this timeless story. There's this certain sense where this doesn't feel like a film that's gonna age anytime soon. Like, this is, damn, it's respectable. I think that's what is so good about Captain America, the First Avenger. And one of my other favorite aspects to the First Avenger is the propaganda scene and how Captain America comes to be who Captain America is. I really love how he's treated as just this guy as superheroes really started in comics, as this propaganda type figure who just, he's the hero guy, everything's black and white and simple, but really, in his own mind, he's like, no, it's more complicated than this. And he feels like he's being wasted. He's not doing anything. He's not actually helping. He's just being this figure, and he doesn't like that. That feels disingenuous, which is anything but what Steve Rogers is. Anything but. He is the most genuine character in this franchise, the most genuine character maybe in existence. I don't know. And I really find that propaganda aspect that this film really delves into very interesting. And it's one of my favorite aspects to this film, and to any of the films in general. I think it's ingenious, kind of the commentary that it takes on superheroes as what they are and as what they started as. And I really love how he takes that propagandic ideal into his costume, but then he becomes like a real hero through that, and he gives people real hope. And he actually is an inspiration. I find the character so inspirational, particularly in this film. And like, I know it's Captain America and I'm Australian and stuff, but like, this is just a man to look up to. This is just such a good character. I really love the First Avenger, and it kind of pains me to not have it as number 1 because it's damn good. Okay, and coming in at number 2 is probably a hot take, but it's the Avengers Age of Ultron. I know this isn't a super popular film in the MCU. A lot of people think this is easily the worst Avengers film and just not that great a film, but I don't know, man. I think it's really, really fun. Where I think it succeeds is that it's pretty much like the first Avengers film, but it doesn't have that boring first act where it has to introduce the characters to each other and all this stuff. It doesn't feel like it wastes its time. It jumps right in right from the start. We know who everybody is, and we jump in right into the action in that snow scene at the start in, I don't know, Russia or wherever it is. And from then on, I think it continues to be a really, really fun film. I think that Ultron himself is a damn good villain. He's really entertaining, if you ask me. And his motivations, if you ask me, also makes a lot of sense. I think that, you know, he's this supercomputer who learns everything about the world in 1 second, and he learns all the bad that humans do to the world and all this stuff. And just logically, in his mind, the solution is to eradicate humans. And as like an emotionless, you know, an emotionless being, that kind of makes sense in a way. He's not thinking that that's a bad thing for humans. He just thinks he's doing a good thing, kind of, maybe? I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking about it way too hard. I'm not sure. But, you know, anyway, apart from that, getting on to other things though, I also think that this is the movie that has some of the best scenes in the franchise. Like the Hulkbuster fight and all that stuff. That is goddamn cool and funny at parts as well. But that being said, if you know me, you know that I'm not really in these movies for the action exactly. I'm in it for the character moments. And with that comes the scene where all the Avengers are trying to lift Milgenor, Thor's hammer. I absolutely love that scene where they're just in that apartment and they're kind of just hanging out. They're kind of just having a laugh. They're kind of just actually people. You know, I think it's one of the only times, you know, the first time probably that we see the Avengers together in a situation where it's not the world ending, in a situation where they're not being superheroes for the moment. They're just friends. They're just hanging out. And there's something really special about that scene. I think it brings a lot to the table. I think it brings a lot of heart. It makes you care for the characters a hell of a lot more. Just simple stuff like that. And I think it's scenes like these that we need to see a hell of a lot more of when it comes to this franchise and when it comes to the genre and when it comes to fucking movies. I absolutely love that scene. Anyway, also, Age of Ultron introduced Scarlet Witch, which is cool because I like that character, and Vision, which is cool, but I'm not as big a fan of that character, I guess. He's alright, but yeah, what I'm saying is, things happen. This movie does set different stages of the franchise. There are some things going on. It doesn't feel like an unnecessary addition. It doesn't feel like just a stupid stepping stone advertisement for the next film. To me, it feels like a worthy successor to the first Avengers, and for me, I think it's better than the first Avengers. Here in Age of Ultron, I think it does the same thing, but a bit bigger, a bit better, a bit funnier, a bit, you know, funner. The pacing feels a bit better than that first half of the first Avengers. I just think it's a really fun movie, and I really like it a lot. So, you know... Yeah, let's get to number one. If you've already deducted the options and all that stuff, you know what I haven't said yet. My first one, number one on my list of favorite MCU films is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This is easily the most mature film in the MCU in general. I love that scene where Steve Rogers and Nick Fury are talking to each other in the SHIELD, whatever it's called, what are they called? You know where planes are? The plane room. That's not what they're called. Harrier? Anyway, whatever they're called. I really love that scene where, yeah, Steve Rogers and Nick Fury are talking to each other about the argument between safety and privacy, security slash freedom. I think that this is a very honest argument. I think that the characters really do a good job of explaining what they believe in and explaining that they're both the good guys, but they're both coming at it from very different angles. And I find that really interesting. I absolutely love that conversation very much, and this almost makes it as my top spot just for that conversation. I think it's great. But as for the rest of the film, I think it does a really good job of challenging Steve Rogers as a character, of challenging him in a way where they change what's going on with him rather than him changing, but it shows us what he would do in this situation where everything has been turned upside down on his head, everything has gone wrong. He doesn't quite know who to trust. And you know, everybody, when they're talking about this film, always goes on about, yeah, it's espionage, spy stuff, and whatever. And like, look, I'm less interested in that and more interested in the fact that, yeah, Steve Rogers just proves that he is such a hero in this film. And although things are going kind of wrong and he doesn't quite know who to trust, he still proves that he stands for what he believes in, and he will fight what he thinks is wrong. I just think that Captain America is a man of his words, and I think that he's super admirable in The Winter Soldier. I think that this is a really, really mature film in terms of the MCU. I think it tackles some kind of complex situations and kind of parallels with real things in the real world, particularly in America and security and all that kind of stuff. But I also think that it's kind of relatable. They really humanize Captain America in certain ways. They also introduce Falcon as a character, as just a man before he becomes the superhero and all that stuff. And I really like that character and his relationship with Captain America. But I also think that it just does a really good job of showing Captain America still being this man who's kind of a fish out of water a little bit, but who's really adjusted, who's really respectable. And it's just a really interesting film that I think it feels a lot more introspective than a lot of films in the MCU, that feels very human, that feels very fun, but also has those grand, awesome scenes of action and all that stuff. Certainly doesn't let you down. I remember when I was seeing, I don't remember what movie it was, but it was playing the first 10 minutes of The Winter Soldier before, maybe it was an Iron Man movie or something, I'm not sure. But it was before the movie actually came out, and we just got to see the first 10 minutes of this one. The Winter Soldier. And I remember just thinking that fight that he has on the ship where he kind of sneaks in and then he beats everybody up and all that stuff. That's just so damn cool. I'm no expert on fighting, but it's damn entertaining to watch. Anyway, my one complaint for this movie, the one thing that I would say is actually a little bit weaker, is the titular character of the Winter Soldier. I don't love Bucky Barnes. And that's probably a hot take. That's probably pissed some people off right there. I don't think he's the best character ever, and I don't really think that this film and the story really revolves around the Winter Soldier all that much. It's really more about S.H.I.E.L.D. and what's going on with that and Hydra and everything. Rather than the Winter Soldier, he's kind of just set dressing. He's the villain who shows up every now and then. Yes, he's involved in the situation and he's important, but for me, I feel like this would have maybe been a better film if it just kept its focus on the S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra thing. That's just me personally, though. I'm just not that big a fan of Bucky. But that being said, you know, I do think it's a good twist that the character has come back and all that stuff. And it's definitely a very important aspect for Steve Rogers as a character and where he goes in the films from then on. But yeah, like I said, just not the biggest fan. It still does a good job though. That being said, when I first saw this in cinemas, I forgot who Bucky was. After the first Avenger, it had been years. I hadn't rewatched it yet. Or yeah, I don't think I'd rewatched it yet probably at that point. So I'm watching it and he's like, Bucky? And I'm like,
who the hell is Bucky?
That guy's name is Bucky, I guess. But maybe I'm just dumb. Anyway, in retrospect, it's quite a good twist, and I kind of do like that. But again, I just think the Hydra S.H.I.E.L.D. thing is a bit more interesting than the Bucky thing. I also like the little road trip that he goes on with Black Widow and all that stuff. And I don't know, I like a lot about this movie. I think it's great. I think it's dumb that he hides by just having a hat on. Like, he can still fucking tell it's him. He's like the most famous man in this world. But anyway, regardless of that, The Winter Soldier is mature, it's fantastic, it's really clever, it's really cleverly written and really well edited and all that kind of stuff. I think that it has one of the best jobs in terms of directing from the Russo brothers, who went on to do Infinity War and Endgame. And I think that this does the best job of portraying its understanding of the character in general. I think this is probably the best portrayal of a character, barring maybe just Iron Man in pretty much every single one of his films. But yeah, Captain America, Chris Evans as Captain America is pretty much just as iconic in my mind. And I think he's probably my favorite hero of the MCU. You know, if you're watching this video, I mean, his top 3 films were quite close to my very favorites, so yeah, I don't know, I kind of stand me some Captain America, I guess, and The Winter Soldier tops it at number 1. Alright, so yeah, that is all. Thanks for watching. I'm glad we're over this. This is a much longer video than I was hoping for it to be. And yeah, let's see how Black Widow goes when that eventually comes out, right? If it's still going to be coming out whenever it's coming out. Who knows what's going to happen? And yeah, cool. That's all. MCU ranked. Blah, blah, blah. Very unique, I know. No one else has done this. Good joke. Okay. Do the things, you know what the things are. The things that the YouTubers say. Like the video, comment on the video, tell me your favorite MCU moments and scenes and movies and blah, blah, blah. Rank them down there. I will read them. I will respond to them. I'll be like, you were wrong if you disagree with me. Bitch. I don't know what I'm saying. But that's all. End of the video. Goodbye. Thanks for watching. Bye. Bye.